picture this scenario because it is a pattern we have all witnessed, likely without realizing we were watching someone slowly fade away right in front of our eyes. Your dad retires at 65. He worked for the same company for 35 years. He had a retirement party that gave him a gold watch, a plaque with his name on it, and a cake from Costco. Everyone said the same thing. You earned this. Time to relax. Time to enjoy life. You've worked hard enough. He walks out of that office on a Friday afternoon feeling proud, feeling accomplished, feeling like he finally made it to the finish line. 6 months later, he's sitting on the couch at 2 p.m. in his pajamas watching the History Channel for the fourth hour in a row. A year later, he looks older. He moves slower. He complains about aches that never bothered him before. 2 years later, he's been to the doctor 6 times for things that seemingly came out of nowhere. 3 years later, you're at his funeral wondering what the hell happened. He was fine. He was healthy. He retired to enjoy life, and instead, life just stopped. This isn't a coincidence. This isn't bad luck. This isn't just the natural aging process catching up. This is what I call the retirement death spiral, and it is killing millions of people decades before their time, not with a heart attack or a stroke, but with a slow erosion of purpose, identity, and vitality that turns vibrant, capable human beings into shadows of themselves within months of leaving the workforce. And here's the most terrifying part. We've been sold this dream, this idea that retirement is the goal, the reward, the thing you work your entire life toward, when in reality, for a massive percentage of people, retirement is the beginning of the end. My name is John, and I spent way too much time studying the psychology of work, purpose, aging, and mortality. If you are someone who's planning to retire someday, or if you're watching someone you love deteriorate after retirement and you can't figure out why, or if you've ever wondered why some people thrive in their 70s and 80s while others fall apart the moment they stop working, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Because today, we're not talking about 401ks or Social Security benefits. We're talking about why the human brain and body are not designed to stop working, why purposelessness is more deadly than cholesterol, and why the retirement model we've built in modern society might be one of the most destructive inventions in human history. Let's start with the data, because this isn't just anecdotal. This isn't just a few sad stories. This is a documented, researched, statistically significant phenomenon that we've been ignoring because it contradicts everything we've been told about work and retirement. There was a study done by the Institute of Economic Affairs in the UK that analyzed the health outcomes of people before and after retirement. The findings were shocking. The study found that retirement increases the likelihood of suffering from clinical depression by 40%. It increases the probability of being diagnosed with a physical illness by 60%. And it increases the risk of taking medication for a physical or mental health condition by 60%. Let me say that again. The moment people retire, their health doesn't improve, it collapses. Another study published in the British Medical Journal followed over 3,000 employees of Shell Oil Company. They tracked people who retired at 55, at 60, and at 65. The people who retired at 55 had a significantly higher mortality rate than those who retired at 65. They died earlier, not a little bit earlier, significantly earlier. Retirement didn't give them more years to enjoy life. It took years away from them. There's data from Greece showing that people who retired early, even with full pensions and financial security, experienced rapid cognitive decline compared to those who kept working into their late 60s and 70s. There's research from France showing that for every additional year someone works past 60, their risk of developing dementia drops by more than 3%. For every year they keep working, they're protecting their brain. And here's the kicker. The research shows that it's not the physical labor that keeps you alive. It's not about whether your job is hard or easy. Office workers, manual laborers, teachers, executives, the pattern holds across all professions. What matters isn't what you're doing. What matters is that you have something to do. You have a reason to get out of bed. You have a structure. You have purpose. And the moment that disappears, the body starts shutting down. So why does this happen? Why does the human body and mind deteriorate so rapidly when we stop working? It comes down to several interconnected psychological and biological mechanisms that most people have never heard of, but are absolutely critical to understanding human health and longevity. The first is what psychologists call identity foreclosure. For most people, especially men, but increasingly women as well, their job is not just what they do, it is who they are. When someone asks you at a party, "So what do you do?" You don't say, "Well, I exist. I consume oxygen and produce carbon dioxide." You say, "I'm a teacher," or "I'm an engineer," or "I'm a salesman." Your profession becomes your identity. It becomes the shorthand for your value, your competence, your place in the social hierarchy. When you retire, that identity evaporates overnight. You go from being someone with a title and a role and a reason for existing, to being no one. You're just a retiree. You're just old. You're just waiting. And the psychological impact of that identity loss is devastating. Imagine spending 40 years building a reputation, developing expertise, becoming known for something, and then one day it's just gone. You're erased. You don't matter anymore. The company replaces you within a week. Your work email is deactivated. Your parking spot is reassigned. You are instantly forgotten. For people whose entire self-worth was tied to their professional identity, this creates an existential crisis. They don't know who they are anymore. They lose their sense of self. And when you lose your sense of self, your brain interprets that as a threat. Your stress hormones spike. Your immune system weakens. Your body starts breaking down. The second mechanism is the collapse of social structure. Work isn't just about the tasks you perform. It's about the people you see, the relationships you maintain, the social ecosystem you're embedded in. You have colleagues, you have work friends, you have people you eat lunch with, people you complain about management with, people you collaborate with on projects. Those relationships give your life texture and meaning. When you retire, that entire social network vanishes. You think you'll stay in touch, you think you'll meet for coffee, but you don't. Within 6 months, those relationships fade. People are busy, they're still working, they have new colleagues, new projects, new things to talk about. You're no longer part of that world. You're on the outside looking in. And suddenly, you're lonely, profoundly lonely. You see your spouse, sure, but that's one person. Humans are tribal creatures. We need multiple relationships. We need variety. We need to feel like we're part of something larger than ourselves. When that disappears, loneliness sets in. And loneliness, according to research from Brigham Young University, is as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of premature death by 26%. Loneliness kills. The third mechanism is the loss of routine and structure. When you're working, your day has a framework. You wake up at a certain time because you have to be somewhere. You shower, you get dressed in real clothes, not pajamas. You eat breakfast, you go to work. You have meetings, deadlines, tasks. Your day is structured. Your time has value. Your presence matters. When you retire, that structure disappears. You can wake up whenever you want. You can stay in your pajamas all day. You can watch TV for 8 hours straight. There are no deadlines. There's no one expecting you anywhere. And at first, that feels like freedom. It feels amazing. You think, finally, I can do whatever I want. But here's what happens. Without structure, the human brain deteriorates. Neuroscience research shows that the brain needs novelty, challenge, and routine to maintain cognitive function. When every day is the same, when there's no mental stimulation, when there are no problems to solve or decisions to make, the brain starts pruning neural connections. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it atrophies. Retirees fall into what researchers call the retirement routine, which is a polite way of saying they do absolutely nothing of consequence. They wake up late, they watch the news, they eat lunch, they take a nap, they watch more TV, they eat dinner, they go to bed, repeat, day after day after day. And their brain, which evolved to solve complex problems, to navigate social hierarchies, to learn and adapt, starts shutting down because there's nothing for it to do. The fourth mechanism, and this one is particularly insidious, is the loss of purpose. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, observed that the people who survived the concentration camps weren't necessarily the strongest or the healthiest. They were the ones who had a reason to live. They had something they were living for, a goal, a person, a mission. Purpose kept them alive when their bodies should have given up. Purpose is not a luxury. It's not a nice to have. It's a biological necessity. The human brain needs to feel like it's working towards something, contributing to something, building something. When you have a job, even a job you don't particularly love, you have purpose. You're providing for your family. You're serving customers. You're solving problems. You're contributing to the economy. You matter. When you retire, that purpose evaporates. You're not contributing anymore. You're not building anything. You're not needed. And your brain registers this as a crisis. What's the point of staying alive if you're not contributing? What's the point of maintaining this biological system if it's not being used? The body starts conserving energy. The immune system weakens. Inflammation increases. Disease takes hold. There's a concept in gerontology called the sitting disease. It's not just about physical inactivity, although that's part of it. It's about the psychological state of sitting, of waiting, of having nothing important to do. When you're working, you're moving towards something. You're in motion. You have goals, objectives, milestones. When you retire, you're sitting. You're static. You're waiting for death, even if you don't consciously realize it. And your body responds accordingly. Now let's talk about the financial industry's role in all of this, because they've sold us a lie that's killing people. The entire retirement industry, the financial advisors, the investment firms, the commercials with happy couples walking on the beach, they've convinced us that retirement is the goal. They've convinced us that work is suffering and retirement is freedom. They've built this narrative that the purpose of life is to accumulate enough money so that you can stop working and finally start living. But that narrative is backwards. For most people, work isn't the thing preventing them from living. Work is the thing keeping them alive. The financial services industry doesn't care about your psychological well-being or your longevity. They care about assets under management. They want you to save, 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 and then retire so they can manage your retirement account and collect fees for the next 20 or 30 years. They've created this artificial finish line at age 65 or 62 or 60 or whatever early retirement age they're selling you on, and they've convinced you that crossing that line is winning. But for millions of people, crossing that line is the beginning of losing. Here's what nobody tells you. The people who thrive in retirement, the ones who live into their 90s and stay sharp and healthy, are not the ones who stop working. They're the ones who replace work with something equally demanding and purposeful. They start businesses, they volunteer extensively, they take on caregiving roles, they pursue creative projects with professional-level dedication. They don't retire from purpose, they transition to a different kind of work. Look at the data on the longest living populations in the world, the so-called blue zones. These are regions where people routinely live past 100 in good health, places like Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Loma Linda, California. You know what these populations have in common? They don't retire. The concept doesn't exist in their culture. People in Okinawa work in their gardens and fish well into their 80s and 90s. People in Sardinia tend their sheep and make cheese until they physically can't anymore. They have what the Okinawans call ikigai, which translates to a reason for being. They wake up every morning with something to do, something that matters, something that gives their life meaning. Compare that to the Western model of retirement. Work hard for 40 years, accumulate money, then stop everything and do nothing. Sit on a beach, play golf, travel. And for the first few months, it's great. It's a vacation. But humans aren't designed for permanent vacation. We're designed to contribute. We're designed to build. We're designed to matter. There's a reason why so many executives, CEOs, and high achievers die within a few years of retirement. These are people who spent their entire lives being important, making decisions that affected thousands of people, running companies, building empires. And then they retire, and within 18 months, they're dead. Their identity was so completely tied to their work that without it, they had no reason to exist. I'm not saying that work under the current system is healthy. It's not. The 60-hour work weeks, the toxic cultures, the burnout, the stress, that's all real and destructive. But the solution isn't to stop working entirely. The solution is to redefine what work means. The solution is to find work that is sustainable, meaningful, and aligned with your values. The solution is to transition from soul-crushing corporate work to purpose-driven contribution. Let me give you some real examples of people who understood this, who rejected the traditional retirement model and lived extraordinary lives as a result. Warren Buffett is 94 years old. He still goes to work every day. He still runs Berkshire Hathaway. He's not doing it because he needs the money. He's worth over $100 billion. He's doing it because it gives his life meaning. It keeps his brain sharp. It gives him a reason to get out of bed. Ruth Bader Ginsburg served on the Supreme Court until she was 87 years old, just months before her death. She had multiple bouts with cancer. People kept asking her when she would retire. She never did, because the work mattered to her. It was her identity. It was her purpose. My grandfather, who's not famous but is very much alive and healthy at 88, never retired. He was a carpenter. At 65, he closed his business, but he didn't stop working. He started building furniture in his garage and selling it at craft fairs. Then he started volunteering with Habitat for Humanity, building houses for people who couldn't afford them. He's 88 years old, and he's on a roof hammering shingles, and he's healthier and sharper than men 20 years younger who retired and stopped doing anything. So what's the solution? How do we avoid the retirement death spiral? How do we structure our lives so that we don't work ourselves to death, but we also don't retire ourselves to death? First, we need to completely reframe what retirement means. Retirement shouldn't mean stopping work. It should mean stopping work you hate and starting work you love. It should mean transitioning from work you do for money to work you do for meaning. It should mean gaining freedom to choose your work, not freedom from work entirely. If you hate your corporate job, don't fantasize about the day you can quit and do nothing. Fantasize about the day you can quit and start the business you've always wanted to start, or teach, or mentor, or consult, or build, or create. Retirement should be a transition to more meaningful work, not an exit from work entirely. Second, start building your post-career identity while you're still working. Don't let your professional title be the only thing that defines you. Develop hobbies, passions, and skills that exist independently of your job. If you're an accountant, don't just be an accountant. Be an accountant who also paints, or mentors young entrepreneurs, or volunteers at an animal shelter, or coaches Little League. Build multiple pillars of identity so that when one pillar disappears, you don't collapse entirely. Third, if you do retire from your primary career, immediately replace it with structured, purposeful activity. And I mean immediately. Not 6 months later when you're bored. Not a year later when you're depressed. The day you retire from your job, you start your next chapter. You volunteer 20 hours a week at a nonprofit. You start a consulting business. You teach at a community college. You join a board. You write a book. You build furniture. You do something that requires skill, creates value, and gives you a reason to get out of bed. Fourth, protect your social connections aggressively. Don't let your work friendships evaporate. Schedule regular lunches, join clubs, join organizations, take classes, go to meetups. Human beings need social connection the way they need food and water. Loneliness will kill you faster than a bad diet. Make social connection a non-negotiable priority. Fifth, maintain a routine. Even if you're not working, create structure in your day. Wake up at the same time. Exercise, shower, get dressed in real clothes, have projects with deadlines, have commitments, have places to be. The moment your days become shapeless, the moment every day is the same, you're in danger. And finally, the most important thing, never, ever retire from purpose. You can retire from a company, you can retire from a profession, but you can never retire from having a reason to exist. You always need something you're working toward, something you're building, something that matters to you and ideally to other people as well. Purpose is not optional. It's the thing that keeps you alive. The retirement death spiral is real. It's documented. It's killing people, but it's not inevitable. You don't have to be a victim of a system that tells you to work for 40 years and then disappear. You can reject that model. You can build a life where work evolves but never ends, where purpose is constant, where your value as a human being isn't tied to your age or your employment status. The people who live the longest and the best aren't the ones who retire early and do nothing. They're the ones who never retire from meaning. They're the ones who stay engaged, stay curious, stay useful, and stay purposeful until their very last breath. If this video made you rethink everything you thought you knew about retirement, if you suddenly realized that the dream you've been chasing might actually be a nightmare, share it with someone who's planning to retire or someone who's struggling after retirement. We need to change the conversation about aging and work and purpose in this country. Thanks for watching The Penny Plan, and I'll see you in the next one.